There was a week in my restaurant where we did the most covers we'd ever done. All day, everything on the menu was selling, and the staff were crushing every service. And I remember standing at the pass on the Friday after the lunch rush thinking, this is it. This is what we were built for. 3 weeks later, I found myself only able to pay the staff, and there was very little left over for me. And this was not because the business was slow after that. It's because I had no idea what my prime cost actually was. And I thought I did, and I was estimating, but the gap between what I thought and what was real was enough to wipe out a monumentally great week. This experience took me years to fully understand, and it's the reason I built Chef Plus the way I did, and it's the reason that this newsletter exists. This is episode 1 of the Plating Profit podcast, and it's the operating philosophy behind everything I do. It's 3 pillars with no fluff and just the stuff I wish someone had handed to me before I learned it the hard way. Pillar 1, everything is downstream of prime costs. Let me say this one clearly because this is the one that will change everything for you. Everything in your restaurant is downstream of prime costs. Not marketing, not your brand, not that second location you've been thinking about, and not that new POS system you're looking at. It's your prime costs, your food cost or cost of goods, and your labor cost. That's it. And in almost every F&B operation, 55 to 65% of revenue disappears into those 2 categories before you even pay rent, utilities, insurance, or yourself. And yet most operators are running these numbers on instinct or not running them at all. I walked into a prepared food shop not too long ago with a beautiful case, a talented chef, and customers who genuinely loved what he made. And within 5 minutes of conversation, the owner began to get emotional. He couldn't understand why, despite his quality of food and all of the hours that he was putting in, there was never enough money in the bank. So I began asking a few questions. How are you pricing your combos? How are those side dishes costed? And what is your target food cost percentage? And all I got was a blank stare. And it wasn't because he's not smart. It's because no one had ever shown him. So we did some math together right there at the counter. And those free side dishes he was adding to his combos were costing him $4.50 per combo. So at the volume he was doing, that mathed out to $13,000 a year walking out the door. The information was never right there at his fingertips, and it had just become an invisible expense that he incurred every shift. That's an example of prime cost chaos in real life. It doesn't look like a catastrophe. It looks like a talented chef who works brutal hours and wondering what he's doing wrong. You could be living in prime cost chaos as well if your food costs are estimated from old percentages and not real unit costs being updated regularly. If the recipes that your chefs and teams are using are living in someone's head and they're not on paper. It could be the portion size drifting shift to shift and chef to chef depending on who's working, leading to that always terrible conversation from a customer asking, oh, who's working in the kitchen tonight before making the decision on what they want to order. It could be that you're scheduling labor on availability and not revenue targets, or you're just following a labor schedule that you've been using for weeks, months, years. And one of the worst things I hear from business owners is that inventory shrink is just accepted as part of the business. And your inventory shrink is going to be the difference between what you expected to use and what you actually used. So if you are not using 100% of everything you're buying, the difference of that is called inventory shrink. So my philosophy is that after we get the books clean and the prime cost is visible, that same operator runs the same restaurant with a completely different set of decision-making tools. It's the same kitchen, the same team, but just a different operating system. And the rule at Chef Plus is simple. I don't recommend marketing, expansion, raises, or a new product line until that prime cost is under control. And it's not because I'm being uber conservative, it's because I already learned this lesson the hard way. I'll say it again because it is the most important pillar. Everything runs downstream from your prime costs. The second pillar is that profit doesn't care what you sell. It cares about how much money you keep. And this one hurts people's feelings, and that's usually how you know it's true. Because busy does not mean profitable. A full dining room is not your P&L, and 5-star reviews don't make your payroll. Profit doesn't care about your story, it only cares about the math. I worked with a bar owner who was genuinely doing well by almost all measures. He had a loyal crowd and solid cash flow, and enough freedom to actually take 10 days away out of the country without shutting down, having the business run the day-to-day as normal. The business worked and he knew it. But when I pulled his numbers, his food cost was running 67%. And on his highest volume product, which was a buy one, get one deal, he was giving away 34% of his gross revenue in discounts before food cost even entered the picture. That combined margin leak was nearly $68,000 a year being left on the table. When all the outside metrics looked great, but you look closer under the hood, you're finding a ton of money being left on the table. But here's what the story actually teaches. The numbers don't lie, and they don't care how busy you feel or look. He could have been bringing home a lot more than he was, but that would have required putting in a little more effort and building systems that he wasn't ready to give at that time. I've found that F&B operators live under 3 lies that quietly limit their growth and their bank account. Lie 1 is we're busy, so we must be profitable. But high volumes mask terrible margins every day of the week. You can run a packed house 70 hours a week and barely break even. And many operators do this exactly for years before they figure it out. The second lie is that our food is amazing and people will pay for it. And if the food's good, at the end of the day, the bank account will be fine. And quality matters. Please do not get me wrong. Quality is paramount. But if your food cost is sitting at 40% and your labor is sitting at 40%, premium pricing will not save you. The math doesn't care how good your product is. It only cares about what's left at the end of the shift. The third lie is that we just need more sales to fix everything. More sales with broken margins mean more work for the same money. Let me repeat that. Putting more sales into the system that is already broken is just more work for the same or even less money than you're currently making. The engine is already burning oil, and driving faster will not fix the engine. At Chef Plus, we celebrate margin wins and not revenue wins. The revenue wins are nice, but the margin wins are the ones that we encourage. If your top line grows, but your prime cost is broken, you're not winning, you're just busier. Profit only cares about the math and not the product. The third pillar is operator level skin in the game. I didn't learn F&B from a spreadsheet. I lived it. 30 years in the F&B space and 10 years as an owner operator of a very busy QSR concept. Making every mistake, living with those 2 a.m. panics, and finishing those payroll scrambles that made me question everything about what I was doing. So when I give you advice, I don't think like a vendor, I think like an owner. I was meeting with a food truck operator a little while ago who had a bad experience with salespeople, the kind that talk to you instead of listening. He approached the conversation very skeptical, arms crossed, and essentially waited for me to pitch. But I wasn't there to pitch. I was asking about his business. I let him talk to me about what was working, what wasn't, what was keeping him up at night. And somewhere in that conversation, the room changed. And it's not because I sold him anything. It's because I spoke his language, operator to operator, not salesperson to client. And that's really the only way I know how to do this. I've found that most financial professionals land in one of 2 camps. You have your compliance vendors, say like conventional bookkeeping, and they say, here are your books. They're accurate. Good luck. And then there's the strategic consultant. And here's your 40-page report. Implementation is now on you. Good luck. But at Chef Plus, I'm the partner you wish you had when you were drowning in your own numbers. Someone who diagnoses the bleed, prescribes the fix, and stays with you while you implement it. Before I suggest a price increase, I cost it to the gram. Before I recommend a new hire, I model that labor impact. And before expansion comes up, I'll validate the unit economics with you. And sometimes the most valuable thing I'll say is, You're not ready for this yet. Let's retool. And that's what skin in the game looks like, as my reputation will live on your P&L. Every conversation I have with a new operator starts the same way. Do you know your prime cost percentage of last month? Of last year? Do you know your prime cost percentage at all? And if the answer is no, then that's the diagnosis, because everything else is downstream from that. I've created a path to success that I call the Profit Framework, and it's my unique approach to finding and fixing profit leaks and the exact system that I used in my business. Each question relates to the framework and reveals the leaks and gets a full scope of your business. The number and types of leaks will tell me the prescription. I'll be diving deeper into exactly what the Profit Framework is in the next episode, so keep your eyes out. Listen, most business philosophies are vague about adding value, caring about clients, helping to innovate, and unless you're a motivated self-starter with time on your hands to implement it all, it's ultimately useless. Looking at your business through these 3 pillars is different because they are specific and they're universal. Pillar 1 explains how F&B actually works financially. Pillar 2 helps to separate ego from math. And Pillar 3 is a promise from operator to operator. Together they form a system you can actually think with, a filter for your decisions, and a way out of the chaos that comes from being busy without being profitable. So if any of this landed, if you're running a full room and still wondering where the money went, I'd love to hear from you. And it's not a sales call, just a 15-minute conversation where I can walk you through the profit diagnosis and leave you knowing exactly where your margins are and how your business is doing. You can get in touch with me directly at Steven@thechef+, or hit any of the contact information in this platform. My name is Stephen Bonin, the founder and owner of Chef Plus. Have a great and profitable week.